The third episode for Blue Lock Season 2 has finally come out, and there has been so much discussion. Have Blue Lock fans lost hope for the anime? Did the animation improve from last week's episode? And is Blue Lock's U20 match doomed to fail? This episode just answered so much about the rest of the season. The first game has finished. Some major goals happened. We're going to be covering every single thing as I give my thoughts on episode 3 of Blue Lock Season 2. Like what happened to the animation, the highlights of the episode, best and worst moments, and most importantly, what the community thinks of the newest episode. So let's get into it. So firstly, let's address what every single person has been talking about. After that last episode where we had PNG lock, has the animation improved from last week? This is probably the question on everyone's mind. All eyes on this episode, especially considering there is a major goal that we'll talk about later. It all happens in episode 3. And I'm happy to say I think the animation has improved, but not entirely. We're not out of the woods yet. Considering how low the bar was because of that last episode, saying the animation has improved could be like going from very bad to just bad. At the end of the day, it may still be bad, even though there's improvements. So we have to take a deeper dive and analyze a little bit. The first thing we should discuss is the movement or PNGs. Are they still using these cursed PNGs instead of animating the characters? Of course, this directly relates to the animation, and unfortunately, they are still using all these PNGs for every single thing that comes to mind. From the running to the goals. However, it is way less than the last episode. So there is improvements in that aspect. Because it wasn't as frequent in this episode, it was definitely more enjoyable. And I think that's the most important thing. Who cares about all this stuff if you can actually enjoy it? But being able to enjoy it doesn't ignore the fact that they are still using PNGs for important moments. For example, the best part of this episode is probably Isogis Goal. That was still the one thing that gave a lot of people hope, and they still used a PNG. Keep in mind, Isogis Goal is the most monumental part in this episode and one of the best panels in the whole manga. And the moment was just a picture of Isagi getting bigger. He's literally inflating like the Michelin Man. The main character finally got his moment and they decided to do that. Thank God that the art is good though and the VFX look cool, otherwise this would be way too anticlimactic. Still though, the PNGs weren't as frequent as the last episode, so you can still say that they improved, but it is still super noticeable in almost every scene that has it. Even though the PNGs weren't being used as much, the lack of animation is still noticeable in almost every single scene. Most of the time, the characters are still and the ball is just moving. This literally ranged from dribbling to trapping. Most of the movement came from the ball and not the characters. And it's not just that, there are times where the characters' mouths aren't even moving, when it's clear they are talking out loud. They even cut out scenes from the manga. When Rin scores his goal, he's all of a sudden on the ground. But in the manga, you see him and Karasu toppling over. Maybe they took it out because there was too much movement to animate. I don't know how many corners they're trying to cut here, but it is obvious and is a big reason why people are still complaining about the animation. It's not like they're hating just to hate. I'm seeing a lot of people trying to justify or defend this animation. I do agree that it has improved from last week and it's still enjoyable. I get that point, but come on, seriously, like characters aren't even moving here. Overall, the animation it did improve. Granted, I don't think the animation improved by much, but the really good moments were animated well, so there was improvements there, and it's way better than last episode. It is really confusing though because Blue Lock Season 1 didn't have many problems with this. In fact, it was more of the opposite, where the characters were moving instead. But moving to a more positive thing, the visuals, like I said earlier, are still really good. The effects, I think, are incredible since it makes it feel like an actual anime. And when you compare it to the manga, it definitely feels more lively. Auras like Shido's demon aura or Isagi's eyes were done pretty well in my opinion. The visuals are important for Blue Lock, but it depends on how you pick your poison. Maybe some people, I'll say most people, prioritize movement because it is a football anime at the end of the day. You want to see the games being played out. But maybe some people prioritize the art because the character effects, aura, and eyes are what makes Blue Lock Blue Lock. So it depends on who you are picking between the two, if you rather prefer movement or if you rather prefer the art. Another thing, visuals are also important for explanations. I think this is actually something we can nitpick and say that they did better than season 1. Barely anyone cares about the explanations of a play, but it's pretty accurate to the manga as well as the effects they use do make it pretty enjoyable. So even though it's a minor thing, I think explaining the plays are still really good. These are things like explaining Isagi's thought process, so all of the puzzles and stuff, setting up a play, so something like Shido's first goal. The explanations really help the goal build-up shine, and I think that's some of the best part of the episode. The goal build-ups are really good because you have Isagi's voice actor just going crazy, good visuals, and they don't have any movement, so no PNGs moving across your screen. And since we just talked about Shido's goal, let's talk about all the goals because this is super important for the U20 game, and it's also our worst and best moments. So there was 3 goals in this episode, 1 being Shido's, 2 being Rin's, and 3 being Isagi's. Starting with Shido, I genuinely don't know what they were trying to do here. This is probably the worst moment of the episode, but every single complaint that makes the animation bad, like the PNGs, the lack of movement, all of it was somehow put into this goal. Shido did a rotating shot, and they just showed him rotating his foot instead of his body spinning as well. And then they put a PNG of him kicking. So because it was a PNG, he's not even doing a kicking motion here. It's literally just a ball moving with a kicking sound. So there was literally 0 movement. The perfect cherry on top is that in the next frame, Shido somehow teleports and is doing a goal celebration over yonder. He was just right by that guy. How is he here? This guy isn't even in the manga too. They're just adding whatever. And he's showing all the viewers' reaction as well. That is the worst moment of this episode, so of course there is gonna be a lot to say about it. The next goal is Rin's goal, and honestly, this was pretty good. There was just nothing special about it though. We're at the point where it doesn't even need to be a good goal. We just need it to not be bad. So Rin's goal, I would say it's okay. There's no effects or anything, but at least they're not using PNGs. Isagi's goal we kind of talked about, but no doubt in anyone's mind, the best moment from this episode was Isagi's goal. The visuals, build-up, and voice acting was really good. People can 100% get hyped by this. It was kind of like water in the desert, saving us from this drought of lack of animation, even though they still use PNGs and CGI for it. One last thing before we talk about the community's reaction, and this is probably the most important thing, why I say we shouldn't be too happy with the animation right now, even if Isagi's goal was good. The reason why I'm a little concerned about the animation is because of the U20 match. Now, obviously, I'm not gonna give any spoilers, but it seems like the animators are putting all their focus onto just the important parts. This time around, it was Isagi's goal. The proof is almost everywhere, with Shido's goal being rushed, characters looking completely different every other frame, just the cutting corners all around. The only thing that stuck out this episode was Isagi's goal looking good, if you can even call it good. I guarantee you, if they didn't put this goal in and we just saw Shido and Rin's goal, everyone would be disappointed. There was just no doubt that they put their time and effort into that singular goal. The huge problem, or what concerns me, is that for the U20 match, it's important moments all around. It isn't just the goals that are important. I won't go into specifics, but for this game, you're gonna expect some crazy shots, crazy plays, dribbling, defense, all the stuff you'd expect from a regular Blue Lock match like Season 1. And since Blue Lock has been only focusing on the goals, I feel like these moments that are just as important as the goals itself might get the lazy treatment that we've been seeing. And that does really suck, because what makes the U20 match so good is the culmination of it all. I'm not gonna say any more to avoid spoilers, but you know what I mean. So with all of that out of the way, what you guys have been waiting for, what is the community's reaction on the 3rd episode? Of course, what everyone thinks is the most important thing. Maybe you have opinions that other people agree with, or maybe you have opinions that other people disagree with. But from what I've seen so far, the majority of the community reaction agrees that this episode is better than the last. That being said, they still think it's pretty bad, just as not as bad as last episodes. PNGs are still a huge problem. I see it trending almost everywhere. We haven't beat the colored manga anime allegations. However, there are more people believing in the anime after this episode though, mainly due to Isagi's goal being good. If that's the case, they're saying that the U20 match just might be as good as Isagi's goal. So that's always a good thing. I think the huge positive that I've seen though is that everyone is still holding on to hope for the U20 match. We haven't really lost hope or lost a lot of people before we get into the main game. So a lot is riding on this match, and I would say as long as they prioritize not just the goals, everything else, the U20 could deliver pretty easily. The writing and plot is super good. Alright, so now you're caught up on everything you need to know about Blue Lock Episode 3, from the animation to the best and worst moments and the community reaction. From last week's episode, it seems like we're kind of on an uptrend, so I really hope that it does continue that way. The U20 is right around the corner, so buckle in your seatbelts because we're either about to go super high or go super low. Whatever the case is, I'll still be here, and I'll see y'all in the next one.